This podcast is sponsored by Camera Museum of London and Tang Cigars of 44 Museum Street, London. Welcome to a Fish Out of Water podcast. This is your host, Richard Lipman. Today, we are interviewing Kip Rosser. This is part 3 of this podcast.
Good. And turn original sound on, and we're good to go. Okay. There's your ether wave. I have one of those too. The same model. I'm addicted to Theremins. I have. Nope, can't hear you.
Do you have many models?
I have 12. Yes. Many of them were purchased out of necessity. The first theremin that I ever owned, I built because I had no idea back in 1996 that you could actually buy one already put together. I did not know that Moog was making them or anything. Moog had lost the legal rights to use his own name, so he had a company called Big Briar, which I knew nothing about. The first theremin I got was from a kit. It's the PAIA Theramax. And I built it with the help of the advice of a friend who knew how to do electronics projects because I had no knowledge of it. But I built it, and it worked, and that's what I started practicing on. After 7 months, I was unable to get the Theramax to respond the way I wanted it to in terms of the difficulty of the classical pieces I was attempting to play. And I learned about Big Briar and bought a standard ether wave, which looks very much like the one that I was playing. So I purchased that standard ether wave, and after experiencing the fact that it wouldn't work or it might blow out on me, I bought a second ether wave as a spare, and I would always carry a spare ether wave with me if I was performing. In case one didn't work, it was a good bet that the second one would. Then I found another standard ether wave lopsided on a microphone stand in the back corner, totally abandoned at a guitar center. There's an instrument outlet in America called Guitar Center. I don't know if it's in London. And I was just walking around looking for some cables, and there was a Moog standard ether wave just all lopsided on a microphone stand, pushed way aside in the back of the store. And I said, would it be okay if I plugged this in and try it and hooked it to an amp? They said, sure. And they had piped in music coming in from the store, and I started playing with whatever the song was because I knew it. And they were just, they said, no one's ever been able to figure out how to make that do that. So, so I purchased that one because it was so inexpensive. It was less than $300 because nobody could deal with it. And then later on, when the Etherwave Pro came out, I purchased those before they had even gone into official production. They were advertising that. So I purchased one of those. But in the interim, I was a subway musician, and I had always fantasized about playing in the Manhattan subways. But you're not allowed to use anything that has to be plugged into an outlet. You must use battery-powered amplifiers and so on. So I purchased the only battery-powered theremin that I could find at that time, and it came from Tasmania. A guy named Keys Enkelar produced the Keys Theremin, and it ran on a 9-volt battery, and it would run for 3 hours on a 9-volt battery. So I bought a battery-operated amplifier at the battery theremin, and I had this thing. I don't know if you can see it. This is a very old iPod Touch. It's an iPhone without the phone in it. And that's what I used to put all my accompaniments on so I could hook it to the amplifier. So I was able to go and play in the subway, officially under the auspices of Music Under New York. And then there's another...
Can I quickly, what was the reaction of people?
Oh, it's all over the map. The reaction of people in the subway is everything from abject fear, just walking, like looking at you like, what the heck is that guy doing? To people coming up and standing within 6 inches of you and ruining the song that you're playing. Nobody understands how it works. So people would come and ask me if I invented it. Somebody thought I had a microphone in my mouth, that I'm really just, I have a mic and it's going into the amp and I'm just doing this to look magical. Other people thought because you're doing this motion, they thought I was pulling a string somehow. There were people who were completely creeped out by it, other people who knew what a theremin was and were fascinated. And I live 72 miles outside of Manhattan. The cost of going in and coming back, there was no point in trying to make a lot of money, because the cost of commuting back and forth, taking the subway to wherever Music Under New York assigned me to play would cost money. So I never did it to make money. I did it to have fun, and because it was a fantasy of mine. I had to audition live at Grand Central Station for a panel of people sitting at a table, and they accepted me and gave me a big banner with my name on it and Music Under New York. And from that point on, I was able to go in, schedule when I wanted to go. There are about 40 different locations, and you call in on a call-in day and say, I'd like Wednesday at 5 p.m. at that location. And they'd say, it's taken, or they'd say, sure, you can have it from 12 to 3. And then you just go in and set up and play. And I did that for years. I stopped just before 2020 and COVID hit. I stopped for a couple of reasons, not the least of which was they assigned me a particular place between Grand Central Station and the Port Authority, one particular place, which I had played at before. And on that day, I got ill, so I couldn't go. And it's lucky I didn't, because that exact place is where the underpants bomber showed up and tried to blow things up. I would have been standing there playing the theremin with this guy with a bomb in his underpants, blew the bomb up, and it apparently didn't go the way he wanted to, and he hurt himself. But I'm glad I wasn't there.
Something
that was
like
the last
passing by and
but there are every type of person comes to see what's going on. I discovered what pieces would work the best that would attract people, because you put out a tip jar or whatever. I would use the zipper case for the theremin and lay out a few quarters and bucks in it, and then people would come and throw $1 in or whatever. And I was lucky. There were some people who would make hundreds of dollars a day. They would be dancing or break dancing or playing drums or whatever, and their job was to go from location to location for 8, 9, 10 hours, and they could make a couple of $100 a day. I usually could break even. So it was basically a free trip in and out and subway fare. I could make 30, 40, 50 bucks. People didn't really know how to approach it, but I found that if I played stuff that they knew, that could gather an audience. And the thing that gathers the biggest audience the fastest is Hey Jude. Playing Hey Jude, I could have 3 people watching. I play Hey Jude and people hear me from all the subway at the hub, and all of a sudden I've got 50 people watching me because I'm playing Hey Jude. That's the one that brings people from everywhere. Once they hear that song, they want to know where it's coming from. So I learned, play Hey Jude first, and then you'll get the audience.
Did you play with backing track?
Did I play what?
With the backing track.
Yes, I always had backing tracks. That way I was completely self-enclosed, and I could come in, play at whatever location, pack up after 3 hours, and go home.
So what's it like trying to a theremin player amongst other?
I'm sorry, your volume is too soft.
Amongst other musicians, what's it like making a living as a theremin player?
Well, I've never made a living as a theremin player. I've never made very much money at all. I was able to break even and get tips, while I played in the subway. There was a point prior to COVID where I had a goal of a certain amount of money per concert, because I was traveling 3 and 4 hours away. I was doing museums, arts centers, libraries, things like that. My goal has always been to bring the theremin and its music to the widest possible audience, because surprisingly, here we are in 2025, and there are still people who know nothing about it, know nothing of its existence. I'm still asked if I invented it, which is hilarious. I could never invent anything like this. And they know they've heard it because the minute you go like this from a science fiction film, they get that they've heard it before, and they immediately think the theme from Star Trek as well. At any rate, I was gradually increasing the price because I would travel 3.5 hours by car with my setup, tolls, all that kind of stuff, gas money. And when COVID hit, prices were slashed, and it became uneconomical to travel 200 miles to go play something for an hour and a half for $150. It just wasn't worth it anymore. But my goal was to be able to make a certain amount per concert, and COVID sort of put the kibosh on that. But I never actually expected to make a living. I do this because it's fun. I initially got the theremin because it was going to be fun, and I still do it because it's fun. Whether I'm practicing or whatever, I have a blast doing it. I never get tired of it. Never.
Is there a scale that people should know about?
A scale?
Yes,
like a musical scale? There's no such thing as a scale on a theremin. You can play in any key. You can play, just pick out a note on a keyboard and start, and you can play it. If I was having trouble, I would go up to my piano, get that interval in my head or whatever, come back down and work on it. There are a number of pieces, and I advocate this for anyone learning the theremin. I always advocate, whether you're just starting out or whether you're an expert, always choose a piece to work on that is absolutely impossible to play. That you don't believe. If you think you could get it in a month, it's too easy. If you think you could get it in a year, it's too easy. If you can go, I will never be able to play this in my entire life, that's the piece to work on. Because in attempting to play an impossible piece, you will develop techniques, you will be able to explore, you'll be able to figure out ways to try to approach it. There's one piece, I'm unprepared to play it today because it takes at least a week of practicing for me to get it back again. It is the second song in Heitor Villa-Lobos's Bachianas Brasileiras No. 5. The first is an aria, and the second is a dance. And it was the single most difficult piece I ever attempted. It took me 4 years to be able to play it, to develop the technique, to develop the ability to play these intervals, which are extremely difficult for a theremin. I worked on it for 4 years, and it became possible. Then a friend of mine challenged me probably 10 years ago to play another piece, and I still can't play it. But the piece is by Charlie Parker. It's called Confirmation. Go ahead, and there's a tutorial where I talk about assigning yourself to play the impossible piece. And you'll see me at the beginning of that piece attempting to play it. And I just laugh my head off because I'm nowhere near being able to play that piece. Nowhere near it. 10 years later, still working on it. But it's a way to be able to develop your ability. Always challenge yourself.
We'd be very interested in a version of Lopez? Is it? You mentioned aria.
Which song?
The second piece that took you 4 years to learn.
Yeah, the dance from Bachianas Brasileiras No. 5. There is, I'm not quite sure if it's still up because I did not put it up. There is a YouTube video of me playing it live. And I did, again, I was not the person who shot it. I never knew who put it up. I never knew, I never gave permission or anything, but it ended up online. This was many years ago. And on that particular day, I had a terrible cold. So while I was playing this extremely difficult piece, my nose was running. And I'm sniffing away, trying to play this piece. And I got an email from someone, an email from a friend who was a theremin player, an electronics expert, and he was actually one of the original builders of RCA theremins in the late 1920s, 1928. He was in Camden in the factory across from the Campbell's Soup Factory, building these first 500 RCA Theremins. And he contacted me via email and said, and put a quote from what somebody had said is, I am not playing that. What I have done is, there's no way that I can be playing that rapidly. And another thereminist chimed in and said, well, he probably sped the recording up for that interval, because that's what I would do. And I wrote back, I never wrote directly to anyone except the former engineer and creator, builder of theremins. I said, no, I am playing that completely live. There's no messing with it at all. That's a live recording. You can see it wasn't put up by me. Yes, I can play it live. Many years later, the granddaughter of Theremin himself heard it, because it's on one of my CDs. She heard the piece and said, can you play that piece live? And I said, I can. The piece was played live without editing when I recorded it. It was played straight through. There was never any piecing together of pieces. I insist on doing it that way so that people will always know this guy is not doing a Glenn Gould. You know, Glenn Gould was famous for taking these pieces and taking this 6 measures from that take and 5 measures from that take and building it all together so he'd get the sound that he wanted. I've never done that. It's live, and if it's bad, it's bad. If it's good, it's good. I want people to know that you can play difficult things live without a lot of auto-tune and things like that.
Tell me about the Theremin
community.
The theremin community is huge. I maintain that there are more thereminists in the world right now than there ever have been. There are tens of thousands of them, and more every day. People, I just got an email from someone who got a theremin for Christmas, I believe a year ago, she said, and sort of put it away, but saw one of the tutorials for the Theremini and said, okay, and has now scheduled a private lesson for, I believe, March 7th or 10th, I can't remember which, and we'll go through. The Theremin community is huge, and I understand you're going to be doing a podcast with Lydia Kavina.
It's done.
It's
Yeah.
done.
It
Yeah.
was
Done.
recorded.
Was recorded.
People have asked who my mentors were. She was the first. She has had me as a guest thereminist on her own theremin tutorials, which take place on Sundays. She's had me twice. And then I contacted her and asked her if I could have a simple one-on-one Zoom conversation with her. Because in all of the research that I've done about Leon Theremin himself, no one has ever touched upon certain questions, but she knew him. She's related to him. And so I was able to ask her the questions I've always wanted to ask, which are basically, what was he like? You never get to know what he was like as a person. There's only one authoritative American language biography of him. There's another sort of biography by a man named Bulat Galayev from Russia. You can only purchase this little book for like $30 from Australia. And when I asked Theremin's granddaughter, Masha, about that book, she said it's all fantasy. She said it's fiction. There's not much truth in it. At any rate, so I was able to ask Lydia, what was he like as a person when he came to teach you how to play the theremin? And she told me he had a great sense of humor and used to joke a lot and just describe him a lot for me, which was great because there's no real, in the documentary, Theremin and Electronic Odyssey, don't really get to see what he is like as a person. And in the biography, Theremin, Ether Music and Espionage, again, there's almost nothing about his childhood, what he was like. There's nothing about his personality. You get to see that he wasn't all that great a businessman and things like that. And there's a saying that I have about certain scientific or people who display, they're on a spectrum of what I would call geniuses. I maintain that people like Theremin or Nikola Tesla or Einstein, they have one foot in this world and the other somewhere like way out there. And it makes them it makes it hard or difficult for them to navigate in this world because their heads are always out there and everybody wants them right here. So you get people like Theremin who initially demanded something like $10,000 a performance, and people thought he was outrageous, just outrageous. Something, I don't mean to change the subject on you, but I do want to cover it before we finish. And that is a huge project that was 2 years in the making. And it's this. I have to tell people about this. This is Juliet Shaw. This is one of her concert programs. She was a first generation thereminist. She started playing in 1936 when there were only possibly 10 other thereminists in the world who were known. There was Clara Rockmore, who was the greatest who ever lived, Lucy Bigelow Rosen, who was Theremin's patron, there was H. Whipple Abbott, there was Julius Goldberg, there was Zinaid Hammerfeld, there were a number of others. There were about 10 first-generation theremin players. Juliet Shaw was one, and she was totally, utterly forgotten, utterly unknown, until now, until 2 years ago. Because a very long story made short was in 2008, I saw her name in the biography of Theremin, Ether, Music, and Espionage. In the acknowledgement, there's a thank you to Karen and Sandra Shaw for allowing the author access to materials regarding pianist, teacher, and thereminist Juliet Shaw. And then she's not mentioned in the rest of the book at all, nothing. And I went, I got to find out who this person was. So I looked up Juliet Shaw, and if you just type in the name Juliet Shaw before what I'm going to talk about, you couldn't find her. You'd get other Juliet Shaws, but never the theremin player. If you typed in Juliet Shaw theremin, you would get to a website called the Silver Mine School of Music. She established it in 1939. And she lived in Connecticut most of her life. She was a thereminist from about 1935-36 when her father bought one for her, one of the original RCA theremins, and she didn't really know what to do with it. She wasn't really, that was interesting, but she was a concert pianist with a hugely wonderful reputation. She was a concert piano player. But Yale University, somebody from Yale University asked her if she would do a talk on contemporary music. And Juliet Shaw had a predisposition and love for contemporary music. She loved the classics, but her real bailiwick was contemporary music. And she thought this theremin is a great way to talk about contemporary music. So she taught herself to play and performed first publicly at Yale University, somewhere in 1936. She subsequently found out that Theremin was alive and living in Manhattan. She went and visited him and took her theremin with her, played for him, and there's a wonderful description that you can now hear her in an interview online talk about meeting Theremin and about what walking into his apartment was like. He was so impressed with her ability, he said, "You need a better theremin. Give me your RCA and I will build you a theremin that has a range of 6.5 octaves." Her story is amazing, and in 2008 I met her 2 daughters. And there is footage of me and her 2 daughters explaining how their mother Juliet played the theremin, her specific technique, which she developed on her own. And so I had one meeting with the 2 of them. They showed me some memorabilia in a shoebox, saying, and we know there's more stuff in the house, but we don't know where it is. And 14 years later, through a series of weird coincidences, I took lost footage, put it together, and sent it to Sandra Shaw Murphy at Silvermine. I did not know at the time that Karen, the other daughter, had died in 2019. I sent the video to Sandra, and it shows herself and Karen demonstrating their mother's technique to me. She said it brought her to tears and asked if she could meet with me. So 14 years later, I went back to Silvermine. And at that time, Sandra, you have to understand, their living room is so big, it's probably a 20 to 25 foot ceiling. It has 3 concert grand pianos in it and seating for 100 people in the living room. And that's where Sandra continues to teach. That's where Juliet taught. And the chairs, the floors, everything was filled with paper bags, boxes, folders, envelopes, stacks of videotapes, audio tapes, reel-to-reel tapes, tons, hundreds and hundreds of items that Sandra had found in the house, most of which she never had heard, seen, or knew existed until she started looking. And it took me 2 months to convince her to give me everything. She wanted it to be preserved, but I said, no organization or institution will take it in this form. They don't have the manpower, and they don't have the budget, or the person power, I'm sorry, or the budget to organize and properly archive this. So this became a project between Sandra and myself. My reason for putting the tutorials up online for free is because it's the only thing up till that time I thought that I really had to contribute. As a thereminist and as a person, I like to be of service and contribute to things. And these lessons that I developed were what I felt I could give the theremin community. When this came along for Juliet Shaw, this was another thing I contribute. I can contribute and give her the spotlight. Make this unknown thereminist, who was one of the best thereminists I've ever heard, make her known again to the public. She was a contemporary of all the famous ones, but she chose to stay in Connecticut, be a piano teacher, do piano concerts. She had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of concerts at Silvermine, opera singers, piano players. She was the only thereminist that would do concerts there. She performed live probably for more years than any of her contemporaries. She raised more money for charities and good causes than any of her contemporaries. She has a larger, more extensive recorded output than any of the other thereminists that were her contemporaries. Dozens and dozens and dozens of hours of recordings that had never been released, that even Sandra had never heard. So I said, this is a way to be of service again and bring Juliet Shaw into the spotlight she deserves to be in. So it took 2 years. And Sandra confided in me a few months into the project that her sister Karen, before she died, about 2 weeks before she died, she said to Sandra, whoever that guy was that came in 2008, get him back here. He will help you organize this stuff. And it's because I had offered to help them back then, and I think I came on too strong. And I was a stranger, so they just, But now, Sandra at that time was 85 years old. She just turned 87. Oh, I hope she doesn't mind my saying how old she just turned. Her birthday was February 7th. At any rate, she allowed me into her home. She gave me everything. And over the course of the next 2 years, I was able to archive it, digitize it, organize it, contact various institutions like Yale, a couple of other ones, the Indiana University, where Karen, her sister, was a professor of piano, and the only institution that really bit was the Smithsonian. So
very famous.
All of the entire collection, including her theremin, now resides at the Smithsonian. And it took me 2 years, and Sandra, of course. Sandra is the one who unearthed all this stuff. If it hadn't been for her, there would be no collection. And every time I would come and visit, there was a pile more of stuff. The last day I visited her, on the day when this was in November of 2023, one of the representatives, the curators from the Smithsonian, came to visit to look at the collection. The night before that, I had slept over at Sandra's. She gave me 300 more pieces to add to the collection, about 150 of which were duplicates. We already had those. But some of the stuff that she found was just unbelievable. Scrapbooks that her sisters made, that Juliet's sisters made, photographs that I had never seen of Juliet's mother and father, and music, concert audio concert footage on cassette tapes, reel-to-reels, vinyl, old 78s. She had found about 150 new items that I had to add to the collection. The guy from the Smithsonian came and took measurements and saw what it was and said he would get back to us. And meanwhile, I added all that other stuff to the collection. So I just wanted to hit that because everyone should now go and see who Juliet Shaw was. You can go to jshawlegacy.com and you will hear and see things, photographs from the collection, video, audio, interview, Karen, her daughter, interviewing her in, I think, 1982. You'll hear her husband, Ray. It's phenomenal. Also, the last thing I'll say about is this. A couple of years ago, to entice people to donate, again, I did not get paid a dime to do this. This was a way of being of service again. But I started paying for certain things out of pocket because I didn't want to have to wait. Instead of going on Kickstarter or GoFundMe, I set up a website where people could donate, and in exchange, if they donated $20 or more, they would get the first collected volume of her music ever released. Now, very soon, within the next month or so, Volume 1 will be online as a free digital download with a 28-page booklet, and Volume 2 has just been completed. I just had it engineered and mastered, and I've just finished writing and designing another 28-page booklet about the collection and about each piece that's in the collection. And both of those will now be available for free online as a digital download.
And what about the... That's fantastic. It will be in the description. Of the archives,
what can they see?
Yes.
Well, Juliet's Theremin is now at the Smithsonian. It still functioned. I played it in concert in October of 2023. Played it in concert at Silvermine. It was the first Theremin concert that had ever been held since Juliet died in 1994. So from 1994, hundreds of concerts, but never another Theremin concert. So that was the first one in decades. But her Theremin is there. But if you go on jshawlegacy.com, you can see items from the collection, and you'll see photographs of Juliet Shaw. You'll see photographs of her kids. You'll hear audio of Juliet playing various pieces. You can see video of her live in concert. There's an audio interview conducted, as I mentioned, by her daughter Karen, which is about a half hour long. There are photographs. There's bio of her. There are descriptions of her two daughters. There's all kinds of stuff there. And you can see photographs of the Theremin itself. You'll be able to see, I periodically add to the website. So there will be more coming in the months to come. But I've had to sort of take a break from this huge project. The amount of time that I put in initially to get everything to the point where the Theremin and the rest of the collection was taken in June of 2024 to the Smithsonian was about 1,400 hours.
Finally, tell us about major achievements, major failures.
Well, major achievement is the Juliet Shaw Legacy Collection. That's number one. That's a big achievement for Sandra and myself. Failures have more to do. First of all, it's really, that word has never really been a part of my vocabulary. In terms of being a thereminist, failures may have sometimes to do with playing off key during a concert. There have been times when I have been scheduled to play a concert and travel 2.5 to 3 hours to get to the venue to find that the organizers never really publicized it. And there was one concert I ended up playing for 3 people. I traveled about 250 miles and only 3 people showed up.
That must be difficult.
Only because they were at the library that I was playing at, which had a big auditorium downstairs, and they were at the library. And when I said to the head of the program, said there's nobody here, she went into the library and said, by the way, if anybody wants to see a Theremin concert, go downstairs. And 3 people came. One woman, her son, and 1 other person. And that was it. So it was a failure of people to show up and a failure on the part of the venue to get people to come. But we had a great time. Anytime anybody wants to try it, even during my live concerts, people can try it. People can try it. I'll put it down on the floor. You can, even in venues where I've played for, let's see, it was Night Arts. I think it was on a Temple University stage in Philadelphia. There were 500 students. And of course, there's no time to let everybody try it for any length of time. But at the end of the concert, in order for every kid to be able to try it, put it on the floor, and they can, as they walk back to their classroom, each one can go and keep going. So they each get to try that. Failures. It's just never been a part of my vocabulary.
Tell us about unusual stories.
Okay, here's a good one. If you've ever been into a small off-Broadway or off-Broadway house in New York City, or most clubs, jazz clubs and things like that, when you go in, the walls are painted black, the floors are painted black, the stage is painted black, everything is painted black, the curtains are black, everything, so they can do lighting effects. There was a concert that was actually featuring a poet, a beat poet, he was really, I can't even remember his name, it was so long ago, but he would recite his poetry in front of the microphone, and he'd bob and weave and say, oh, the pink stilettos of my mind and my heels on your lips would be, it is like a bongo player playing bingo. It's just the weirdest surreal poetry, right? And he wanted musicians to accompany him, to improvise. So I was asked to come. I can't even remember how he connected with me, but he said, can you come play the theremin? And he had a saxophone player, a trumpet player, a percussionist, a guitar player, and me. And, everybody's like, and they're playing away. And now the theremin has to be far enough away from the others so that they don't interfere with it. So I have the ether wave. So the ether wave is black. I'm dressed in black. The microphone stand is black. The cable is black. The amplifier is black. And so I'm playing along and doing this stuff. Great. The concert's weird as heck because everybody's like, whoa. And they served alcohol at this particular club. So the concert's done and I'm out in the hallway packing everything up. And this guy who had been drinking a little bit comes up to me and I'm putting things away. I'm on the floor putting cables and winding them up. And he goes, man, you sure got a lot of guts to do what you do. And I went, what do you mean? Guts? He said, yeah, I got to give you props, man. I don't know, but it takes guts. I don't know. I see you up there. I'm watching all the other musicians, and man, you've got some guts to do what you do. I didn't know what he meant at all. It turns out that he couldn't see the instrument. He couldn't see the mic stand. He couldn't see the cable. He didn't see the amplifier. All he did was see a guy standing in a corner by himself. And he said, yeah, you sure got a lot because everybody else is playing instruments and you're standing in the corner going like this. What is that? Thanks very much. He said, I don't know if that's dancing or what that is, but you're just doing this stuff.
It's a pleasure. We'll be in touch.
That's it?
Yes.
Well, thank you, Richard, for involving me in this. I say goodbye to everybody. See you next time.
Thank you. Fantastic. This podcast is sponsored by Camera Museum of London and Tang Cigars of 44 Museum Street, London. Thank you for listening to a Fish Out of Water podcast. This is your host, Richard Lipman. Should you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please get in touch.